Okay, people. So I am just happy to be sitting down with Mahesh Pailoor. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Pretty close, Pylor.
Pailoor. Pailoor. Okay. Well, Mahesh, thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. Yeah, we you've got a new film coming, right? You have a
Yes,
new
brand
film.
new.
Yep, gonna have its world premiere at Dances with Films, right?
Yes,
On the 20th, on the
yes,
opening night of the festival. How does that
yeah.
feel?
It's interesting because as a filmmaker, and you're kind of stuck in these bubbles, right? Like you make your movie, and then you're in the editing room with just the editor, and so you're in these small spaces, and then you have no idea like how a movie is going to really, how audiences are going to respond to it. So this is, I mean, what's great is there's a little bit of validation to be playing at a festival like Dances with the Films, but then also to be the opening night film means that okay, I think they think that maybe we can play for an audience. But to be honest, it's like I haven't seen it with an audience yet, so I'm excited. I'm nervous, but I'm also very excited to see like what are people gonna take away, because I think it's a very moving film, and I think I hope people will respond to it.
Oh man, that's interesting, right? Because I've
Yeah,
just had a conversation with Carter Ward about his film,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh my god, my mind has just gone completely blank. Step back, doors closing. Yeah, that's Carter's film,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
hasn't seen it with an audience yet. So
yeah. Yes,
his
we're in the same
premiere
boat.
at the festival. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
no, it's wild.
paper flowers, man. That's I mean, the title, right? I
Yeah,
had no clue what this was going to be, right? Henry
yeah,
sent me the film, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm open, man. There's Henry always sends me good stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'll take a look, right? But I had no clue. And then I watched this thing that's based on a true story. I had no clue. I had no clue about Shalin Shah. And it was just, oh man, this film just hits you. It really
yeah.
does hit you. Like, and reading your director's statement, you didn't know about him at first
No,
either. So what was that
no.
experience like, finding out about this young man and his
Yeah,
story?
absolutely. It's his because yeah, so I live in Los Angeles. Shalin Shah, the movie's based on him. He went to USC right down the road from me. He grew up in Southern California. And this story takes place in 2015. And
Mm,
I didn't know his story. Um, but then the producer, Asif Vyas, our incredible producer, he reached out to me. Now this is like, I want to say this is 7 years ago. He reached out to me. This is an indie film, so it takes a while to get a movie made. But he reached out to me 6, 7 years ago, and he sent me the articles, and I was blown away. That I didn't know his story right away, but also just the impact. What I loved about the idea of making this movie was that, like you, Kevin, like you didn't know Shalin. I didn't know Shalin, but he had an impact on a lot of people, and for me, I love being able to shine a light on him, his story, his life, the message that he left that I relate to, which is, not to take anything for granted, to appreciate
mm,
every moment of life. Um, that thing, I found it to be like such an inspirational thing for me that I wanted to also then kind of share that with the world. And I think for me, like when I just was immediately sort of given that material and to look at like his life, I think I was the thing. I'm now in my mid 40s. I have 2 young kids, and I think all the time, I'm connected to this guy, right? All the time. This is all I'm looking at. I'm looking at screens, so I'm always connected to something. But I feel like more and more, I have to remind myself to just be present. To
mm.
be in the moment, to live life in the moment. And Shalin just became a little bit of that inspiration for me and a reminder. And that was a very powerful message and something that I wanted to then kind of relay and bring back into telling this story. So it started with me not knowing anything about him, but then being inspired by him. And now, like, I feel that my life has been completely affected and changed by him, even though I didn't know him and I didn't know that story in the beginning. And I hope that's the same thing that happens with audiences when they start to watch the movie and they start to see his story and learn more about him.
I think so, right? I think so.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of this is, right, you know, it's something that went viral in 2015.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there's so many things that go viral. They're they're this thing for this little minute period of time,
Yeah.
and then it's done. It's
Yeah.
gone. But
Yep.
this film, you know, like I work in communications, right? Marketing and
Yeah.
communications. And what you've done, you've extended the life cycle
Yeah.
of this
Yeah.
story, which is
Yeah.
incredible because it doesn't disappear. And I think that's
Yeah.
the beauty of his message, because it's something that does resonate, right?
Yeah.
And the fact is, like, it can now hit a completely new generation, a new
Yeah.
audience. And that's
100%. I love that. And that's it, because you're right, because I think like we live in a time now where it's like everything happens so fast. There's just a flash, you know, like something happens and then we move on past it to something new and something the next thing. But Shalin's message is something that it's universal, it's timeless, it's something that we all can get behind. So it's exactly that. It's like this something that happened in 2015. It had that moment then, and it still extends, whether it's the people in his life and the people that it inspire. But I think through this movie there's an opportunity to like rekindle that fire and to spread it even further. And I love that idea, and I hope, you know, that's what this film, you know, does.
Yeah, no, I think it will, man. Like when you got sent the you know, sent the articles
Yeah.
and the idea of doing
Yeah.
something, what what originally kind of jumped into your mind? Were there
Yeah.
any hesitations, any
Yeah.
like fears or thoughts of, okay, if I'm going to tell this story, it has to be this, it has to do this, it has to be here?
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. I mean, there are a lot of, you know, things. I think when I got the material and was asked to direct the movie, there was a lot of hesitation. And I will say that in the sense that, number one, it's a true story. So there's
Mm,
something that you have to think about in terms of like, how do I honor Shalin, the real person and the family, and how do I tell this story in the most compelling way possible as a movie? So there's always that kind of balance. And then the second thing I think, you know, was just how, you know, there have been other movies that have sort of dealt with some kind of similar things in terms of terminal diagnosis with young
yeah.
adults, whether it's the movie like Fault in Our Stars or the movies like that. So there was always that thing too, which is like, okay, well, how do I take this particular story and how do I make sure that it's telling something else, a new angle on this? And in that, what I mean by that is also how do I sort of bring myself to the story? And
Mm,
so those were definitely like things. And I think for me, again, it just came down to, I think when I sort of dug into Sheldon's story even more, I kind of felt that there was this lovely and important sort of almost like a spiritual arc that was sort of happening to him in his life, and I thought that that was an interesting thing for me personally to sort of get behind and to kind of tell. And what I mean by that is that I think, you know, in so many ways, you know, and I speak for myself, but like when I was 20, 22 years old, I wanted to change the world too. You know, I
mm,
wanted to. You have these big ideas of things you want to do, and that's what Shalin wanted to do. He was at USC, bright, promising young kid, and he wanted to go out into the world and make a difference, and he did do that. Right, he goes off and he goes to Peru for the Peace Corps, and that's a big idea to go somewhere else, and that's what we all think when we're young. These big things. I'm going to make a difference somewhere else. I'm going to do that, and then he gets this diagnosis of a rare form of cancer, and he comes back to LA, kind of shattered. Like, what am I now? What is the meaning of my life? What do I do? And I think what happened to him, and what I tried to like bring to the story is that idea of making a difference became smaller. Instead of this big idea of changing, you know, the whole world, it actually became something much smaller and something much more internal. And that's
mm,
what I mean by the spiritual journey. And then what happened by that, then it started to inspire the people around him. And
yeah.
then that ended up sparking a global movement. So it's almost like this. It felt very very tangible to me now again as I get older. But this idea that we can all make a difference, and it starts with us. It starts with what's inside of us, and then how that kind of spreads to the people we love and care about around us, and how that can build out from there. So that's how I got over my hesitation, but trying to find my way through it. But that was yeah. So there was hesitation for sure, but quickly I knew that it was just like a powerful story, and I wanted to be part of it. I couldn't stop thinking about it at some point, and then I knew I was like, okay, I have to do this.
Mm. Yeah, no, I can see how this kind of thing will just stick with you.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah,
because it's just like as soon as you just see how he's navigating this, it
yeah,
just impacts you. And it's interesting because, joining the Peace Corps, right? Going to Peru, like, that's a big thing, right?
yeah,
But the thing with that is, right, a lot of people go, I'm helping a charity, right? They
yeah.
volunteer, they do something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they go, and that is them, it's kind of like the badge they wear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like
Mm-hmm.
their life doesn't necessarily reflect that thing. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
100%.
kind of like, as a kid, I went to Sunday school because that's when nothing was open on a Sunday, right? So
Yeah.
you go to Sunday school, hang out with your friends, right? But it was interesting because I'd see this, what I didn't know what it was at the time, but you realize it's hypocrisy. Because people would go to the church, they'd say this stuff,
Yeah.
but they didn't live that life,
Yeah.
right? And I think
Yeah.
there's people that will volunteer, they'll give an hour a week, or they'll do this thing, but they don't live that life. And
Yeah.
so him going to Peru, now he was living that life because you could see he cared, right? But
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
coming home, being hit with this thing, it's kind of like he gave more by doing less
Yeah.
from how
Yeah.
he viewed it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that
Yeah.
was the incredible thing. Like, he probably touched more lives through this, which he might not have viewed or understood. But it
Yeah.
was just because you see how he lived, right? How he put himself into that, how he, you know what I mean, was with the people around him. And that
Yes. Yeah.
is the thing that I find so fascinating. It's not just lip service, right? It's not
Yeah.
just a perception. No, this is a reality. This is, you know, the realness of it. And I think
Yeah.
that's where it's beautiful and touching and just heart-wrenching all in one thing.
Kevin, I'm so happy you said that too, because I think, I mean, that's exactly what we're going for. I mean, just even stylistically, the way that we were trying to make the movie, I think the film does shift in terms of like the tonality of it, and
Mm.
everything that you're saying. And it's like, because it's right. I mean, I think Shalin, as a going to Peru, going to Peace Corps. I mean, I think he lived a life of ideals that he wanted to follow. So I think he was a
Yeah.
person that like, but like I do think I agree with you. It's like, especially when you're young too, and you because sometimes you don't even know where to put that energy or how
Mm.
to place it. Even though that's something that you want to do, like make a difference, all those kinds of things. But I think when Shalin, is faced with the reality of this terminal diagnosis, everything shifts, and a reality kind of sets in, and I think that's important. And again, it's like for all of us, right? It's like when we live our lives, we always think about the sort of this endless road in front of us. And I think the perspective, and this is the thing that I think Shalin brought, was like when you realize that that road does have an endpoint, and who knows if it's like tomorrow or whatever it is. I think it changes everything, right? It changes
Mm.
your whole perception on things, and I think that that's what happened to him. It became something else, and it's exactly that. It's that thing because I think he did make an even greater difference. Who knows, but in his life, he made an even bigger impact by doing something even smaller, which was
Yeah.
to inspire those around him to live as well as they can and appreciate every moment. And that was the thing that spiraled out, which
Mm.
is, I think, a lovely thing and a powerful thing.
Yeah, it really was. You know, I think something else that like really jumped out to me, and you never know with these things, right? Because oftentimes
Mhm.
you have these stories that are true, like based on true life, and then you'll see a photo of the person and feel like, wait, what? That doesn't that I would look nothing like. But at the
Yeah,
end, you have that footage. I
yeah,
was blown away by how much, you know what I mean? Like how
yeah,
much like Kapil
yeah,
and Olivia look like Shaolin and Fiona. That was
yeah.
incredible.
You know what? It's so funny about that because, well, first, Kapil and Talwalkar and Olivia Liang, who play the two leads, Shalin and Fiona. Couple actually went to USC, basically at the same time that
Oh,
Shalin did. So they crossed paths, and he was an inspirational figure to Kapil in real life because he knew his story. He knew that person. So it was a very weird full circle moment too for him because so now years later, as we're casting this film, Kapil is from California. He went to USC. There was a lot of like similarities, and he knew him. So it was almost like it was meant for him in so many
mm,
ways. But the thing that's I think was so fascinating because you're referring to at the end of the movie we have this sequence in the end credits that shows the real footage of Shaolin and Francis and what was very interesting and even as we edited it because just to get to the whole idea of making a movie based on a true story at some point for me you know I can't make a complete facsimile of what really happened because I wasn't
yeah,
there. So there's as much research that happens. The writers had done and like all these things. And Asif, the producer, is related to Shalin. So there is a lot of he was bringing a lot of the reality to it. But at the same
mm,
time, for me as a director, I didn't know him. I didn't. So I have to like divorce myself at some point, even at the beginning. And part of it is in telling this story. I hope I'm still telling the truth, even though it might not be 100% true, right? All those
yeah,
kinds of things. I can't be in the room. I couldn't have been in the room with these people at the time. But the point is like, so we at some point before we started shooting, we kind of had to like push aside, you know, even the idea of making something that looks exactly like the real thing. But then what was so fascinating is that like when we got to this end sequence, and I was working with our amazing editor Carrie Lynn, and we're sitting there in the room together, and we're putting together the real life photos and videos, and everything that you just said is just like it just kind of came through. Where all of a sudden like we're seeing so many moments in the real life footage that we just saw in the movie and so like all the stuff that we had done in the research and all this, it all came through, but it just you could feel that like everyone kind of lived this experience, and it felt very true to what really happened and the real people. So it was honestly just like an amazing moment to like kind of feel that happen and watch that happen, and I'm glad you said that too because I think it's very true.
yeah. No, it was just this really kind of, I don't know, weird moment at the end
Yeah,
because it's just
yeah,
like you have all of these emotions because it's heart wrenching, it's sad, but it's also kind of joyous and happy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then we, you
yeah,
see this footage and you're just like, yo, and you
yeah,
just have just these feelings, man. It just hits you with these feelings, and it's
yeah.
oh man, yeah, it
And I
was
love that you
definitely
said that too, because I think it's really important and for us, that was because there was joy, and there was something about it that I think we wanted to convey was that this is a movie about hope and
Mm,
resilience, even though it's a story that deals with a terminal diagnosis. Um, it is an inspiring story, and I think that that's I hope that comes across. And I'm glad you said that way because I do think that that's important and that's something that we were striving for. And I think that that's what Shalin did. He left every year, the family celebrates him, and it's this joyous kind of celebration of his life. And I think that is, it's a testament to him, but it's just, and the family, but it's just a message that I think is important too for the movie.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's funny because I think watching it, there's things that I kind of guessed, right?
Yeah.
The
Mm-hmm.
cough and different things.
Yes.
I had no clue of what was the story, what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But you see certain things, you'd be like, okay, I think that's not good, right? That's gonna lead to something.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you watch something and you can see those beats,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of disappointing, right? You feel let down, you feel unfulfilled. But with this, you don't, right? Because I think you're drawn into the emotion of it, like this relationship. And it's the relationship of, these two people, but then also everyone around them, right?
Yeah.
And how they navigate and interact. And it's crazy because, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't fond of a certain character at the beginning, right? Did you just all right from your experience, from everything that you probably went through, and then you're doing this to them? Come on, man. Like, but you see the journey they go on, which
They
is
go on
just
that journey too.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just lovely. But it's funny, it's not a huge scene, right? But towards the end, when Shaolin's mum and dad are talking, and she's just like, I just want more time. Can I just not have? And that scene is like a friggin' hammer. Oh
It
my
is.
God.
It
That's
is.
it's just it's I just want more time. Like she kind of says it a few times, and it's just the cadence of it, right?
Yes.
That
Yes.
deterioration of those words, and it just wrecks you,
Yes.
man. Like I was, you know what I mean? Like I didn't completely, you know what I mean, bull watching a film, but my eyes were damp, man. My eyes got damp a lot, and I'm just like, God damn it.
Yeah.
That was
I mean, Kevin, just hearing you say all that, I mean, I'm so happy because it's so great. Because again, like, not a lot of people have seen this movie yet, so so even just getting your reaction to it is really gratifying. Just in terms of exactly, like, just in terms of like, as a filmmaker, how do you tell this story again? Like, how what is this? And there are tropes to it. There are things like you're saying, like there's a cough, and like how does that get paid off? All those kinds of things. And I think I tried to lean away as much as possible, like from some of those things of just like, and there's a little bit of a what do you call it? Like a little bit of a magic trick of it all. Like you're watching this, but the movie is really about this, all that kind of stuff. But I think for me, it was really trying to just be more about this journey. And I thought of it more in terms of like musical, almost like waves that are happening versus like a 3-act structure. This happens and there's your act break. It's hopefully less about that and just more about a movement that happens in these phases as you watch the movie. So it just washes over you into some kind of emotion. That's sort of the idea. But I think it's interesting because even, you're right, because like that scene that you bring up and the actors, is a testament to those actors who are amazing. Meera Simhan and Faran Tahir, absolutely incredible. These are the parents in the movie, and that scene in particular, I remember, and it was like maybe the second or third day that we were shooting, and again, you don't with this movie, the trickiest thing is the tone because it is a movie that's sentimental. But if you don't earn that sentimentality, it falls off a cliff pretty quickly, and then all of a sudden it's a cheesy kind of thing. And I think, and hopefully we earned it, but the actors did, right? And in particular, this scene, I remember watching the scene with Faran and Meera, and they're sort of dealing with the aftermath of hearing this news and kind of coming to terms with it in some way. And there are these character arcs that kind of flip flop and change. But in this particular scene, and we were sitting there, and it's a quiet set, and the sun is setting, and their silhouette, and we just started going, and I just watching them on screen, I felt like, okay, I I see now that we can make this movie. This is the scene. This is the tone of how we can get to the movie. These actors just blew me over. I mean, there wasn't a dry eye when we were making this scene, um, and it was incredible to watch them work. And really, yeah, again, testament to them and all the actors, because they all brought a sort of groundedness to this, and hopefully, like the things again, like the sort of stereotypes that we were trying to maybe like twist, they brought a reality to that, and allowed things that might feel like, a stereotype in the beginning gets twisted and turned towards the end, and they're real people, and they all come from love, even if their actions are something that sound or feel a little different. But I'm so glad you picked up that scene, because that was the scene that, like, I looked at the DP, he looked at me, and we were like, and the DP was amazing, Akash Raj. We looked at each other and like, this is the movie right here. This is this is it. So it was great.
Yeah, no, I think just there's a lot of things that kind of resonate, right? It's like
Yeah.
when we have like that thread with one of the characters, but we don't see anything happen with it, and
Yeah.
then you get the tag at the end, and that
Yeah.
you just, oh man, it was nice, right?
Yeah.
Because you just
Yeah.
think, oh, he like the impact of this person, it transcends, right? It's
Yes. Yeah.
transcending,
Yeah.
and it's
Totally.
it's still with people, and it's enabled this person to do this thing, and it was just like, oh yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy
Like,
you said that. Yeah.
was there a thought of bringing that moment like earlier in the film though?
That, that's a great question. I mean, so much. I mean, so much on an indie film is dictated by just the amount of days and time you have. So, like, as much as you want to, ideally, you'd love to shoot, in order of scenes so that you can go on the journey, but you don't have that liberty when you have a condensed timeline. So, yeah, you're jumping around
Mhm.
because, yeah, literally, I think I'm trying to remember, like, yeah, I mean, again, a testament to these actors. I mean, we shot this, unbelievable kind of scene of them coming to terms with everything, and this is like just a critical turning point for them, and emotionally, all those things. And right before it, we shot a scene that was early on in the movie, which is the scene in the bedroom, which is that a much lighter scene. They
Right,
were back
yeah.
to back, so it's so hard, because you're right, like, it's like, how do you do that? And as a director, I try to be able to put them in the places that they need to be, but at the end of the day, it's them, and they're amazing actors, just to begin with. So, like, they were able
Mm.
to balance those two things, and give them a little time, a little space, and change the dynamic in terms of like the tone on set, all those kinds of things. But yeah, it's a tricky thing. But you're forced into a corner on some of these movies where it's just like, okay, we're gonna have to shoot this scene early, even though. Uh, but again, I'm really happy that we did, because I think so much of the tone of the movie kind of shifted after that, because once I saw that on screen, what these actors were doing, and the way that we were shooting it, it became apparent, like, oh, we can make this movie. Because, to be honest, I wasn't sure, even as we're about to shoot. It's like, okay, because there's a tonal difference in me. Some parts of the movie feel like a little bit more, and I don't mean this but like a young adult rom com a little bit,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
another part that's the cancer drama. Wow, there are these two movies that are working side by side, and they bounce back and forth sometimes, and so that bouncing back is always a trick. Like, how does this will this work? Will this not work? But when we saw this scene and I was watching on screen, I was like, we can get here. This is some completely emotional. I'm grounded. I'm here, and it's rooted in something. And so when I knew we had that, then everything else felt. It was honestly, like, a huge relief. It was like, okay, I know we have a movie that's going to work. So yeah, but it's tough. Yeah, that's a great question, because that's a hard one to always do.
Like with you know, shooting out of sequence
Yeah.
and having these different kind of, you know, emotional shifts.
Hmm.
Like, were they little devices that you use to help set the tone and reference points like music or films, you know, books or just
Yeah.
other performances that you've seen and you'd be like, okay, we're trying to do this, or if you watch this, that's what we're trying to get to here.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, I think for me as a director, it's just really setting the tone of a lot of just like even like so for instance, that scene that we're talking about, which is a heavy emotional scene, it's a completely quiet set. I'm whispering to the actors in a very different way. I'm giving them a lot of time. I'm giving them space before we start shooting. Please
Mm,
go, take time, all those kinds of things. And so the process to get to that scene, there's a little bit of a journey. We do talk about where they're coming from, those kinds of things to kind of set them up. But it's for me kind of just setting up the environment so that it feels heavy on set. Versus the previous scene, it's a little bit lighter. So we can kind of joke around. I can talk to them a different way, those kinds of things. So that's sort of like how I kind of work just in general, just trying to set up like the environment of the scene, just how I behave, how I act, and and then everyone kind of like follows in turn. The rest of the crew kind of follows in turn, and then you just kind of start to feel it. So that's kind of how I deal with it, because yeah, it's a tricky thing to kind of bounce back and forth. But yeah, if an actor ever had a question, then you can take them aside and kind of talk them through it. But these two knew exactly what they were getting themselves into that day. They knew the sort of prep work. They're pros. They are amazing, and so I had no question about them. But it's a great question. Like sort of like how do you do it? And yeah, for me, it's really just trying to like create the environment that feels a little bit more like the scene. Somehow.
mm. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense, man.
You know?
Like, one thing I was curious about is looking
Yeah.
at your, and IMBD can be all over the place, right?
It is up
But
there. Yeah.
it looks like, because you did Brahim Bulls in
Yep.
2013, right? That was
Yeah.
your feature
Mhm.
directorial debut.
Yeah.
And this is your second feature,
Yeah. I know. It took a while.
right?
Yeah.
Like, so there's a big gap between fit.
Yeah.
Now, it's not that you've been under a rock, you know what I mean? You've been doing a
Yeah.
lot of other things,
Yeah.
but what was it like coming into like this type of film
Yeah.
after that time, right?
Yeah.
How did it feel for you telling this kind of story?
I mean, this is a great question, and it's something that I thought a lot about because yeah, I had I had made my first feature, Brahmin Bulls, yeah, back in 2013, and that film kind of came out of necessity in the sense that I'd done a lot of film school. I'd come out and like it was sort of like, okay, well, how do I make a movie with the resources I have, whether it's through friends who can act or who are just in the crew and putting it kind of together. And that was a tight schedule, low budget, and I'm very proud of the movie. But it was its own thing. And then,
Mm,
like you said, yeah, then it's like there's a big gap. And in that interim, I had gone off and directed mostly like episodic TV. So directing TV shows like The Blacklist on NBC or
yeah.
SWAT on CBS, which
Mm.
are totally different kinds of things.
But
So that,
big projects,
yeah,
right?
no,
This is the
they're big.
thing.
They're big shows. Yeah,
Yeah, you're not
yeah.
under a rock. You're doing
No,
big moves
yeah.
here,
Yeah,
right? So
so they're big shows. They're
mm,
big like action set pieces. It's a very different kind of thing. So to come back to this movie was I didn't even know myself like, well, how do we do this? And what was the two things about it? One, I knew like, okay, I wanted to get back to some of that like that youthful spirit. So we actually got a very young crew. Like I went back to my film school and I was like, okay, and we got Akash Raj, who I knew before, but he's a younger DP that had gone to AFI, the same school that I went to. And the rest of the crew, Carly Wyman, who's our production designer, she's young. Everyone was just kind of young again, so that we had that energy, which was great to have on set. But then the thing that was like fascinating for me was that even though this was a low budget movie, and I coming off of like bigger budget shows with like huge crews that you can do literally. I mean, you're shooting in New York City and like we're going to shoot in the park and you go to the park and there's like, 100, people and there's lights everywhere, trucks everywhere. And then you're directing actors. to go from that to this kind of a small movie, I wasn't sure what it was going to be like. But what was so great and gratifying to me was that all the skill sets I had learned in television were so applicable to making an indie film, and to come full circle from making my first feature, which had its own stresses, its own kinds of things, but navigating that kind of like 20-day schedule of making a movie and bouncing around and all those kinds of things. This felt very easy in a very nice way, in a relaxed way, and it was kind of rewarding because we shot in LA, so it was nice. I could come home to be with my family and all those kinds of things, and the work itself, I felt very, and to take the inspiration from Sean, I felt very present, and so it was always, and so anyway, it just felt like a really nice thing of like, I don't know if I could have made this movie as my first movie. It needed me to get older to have a different appreciation of the story, but also the experience that I had over the last 10 years of directing other kinds of things and other shows, and learning how to deal with those kinds of issues and stresses and actors and all kinds of different things on those kinds of big shows, to come down and to do that, to work on something smaller that was a little more personal and meaningful to me, was so gratifying, and it was fun, and it was great. It was a nice reminder of what I love to do, and what I've learned along the way, which is great.
Oh man, nice.
A great question, yeah, because that's a.
But you've got a family, right? You've got a family,
Yeah.
you've got kids, and you're making a film like this. There must be, I imagine, an emotional toil that comes with it. Like, so
yeah.
How do you navigate that, right? Like being on a set, dealing with these heavy subjects, and then coming home, right, to your wife and your kids, and being able to then, be the Mahesh that they know, right?
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's really tricky, yeah, because you of course, especially on a movie. I mean, you don't shut off at wrap time, right? You come home and you're working on the next day, and you're always working. I mean, that's what we do as directors. We're always working. There's no like a necessarily shut off point. But I think, again, just in terms of like being older and having that experience, I'm able to navigate it much more easily. It's not I can kind of shift back to being the dad, and then coming back to be back on set, and it's actually really refreshing and a nice perspective, to be honest, because truly you realize what's important. You're really important. It's your family and kids. I mean, even to the point, my daughter, who's 7 years old, she was coming to set a few times, and she is in the movie for a blip. My son's in the movie for a blip. All these things, and it was nice to kind of bring them into the fold, and and my wife too, who is a huge supporter, all the way. She's an amazing filmmaker in her own right. But to have her kind of through the process, I could always turn to her, and with questions, and she always helps me through different things. So yeah, it's hard. It's in a way, like it was nice, because as a filmmaker, this is who you are. So you're balancing it all the time. So it was nice to be able to do that. It was nice to be able to do that with them. But yeah, emotionally, it's tricky, for sure, because especially something like this movie that does have some sort of heavier subject matter to it in places. But I don't know. It just felt the process just felt so integrated into my life, that it really worked. It felt really nice in a weird way.
Well, yeah, I imagine there's like something about bringing something like this to a larger audience, right? Bringing that message out to the world, right?
Yeah.
There must be something to that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I am. I know Asit, the producer, who's been on this longer than anybody. But I must say, like, he's sort of like carried this movie on his shoulders single handedly. But so I think for both of us, because I think he also, like, we don't. This is the point that we've been wanting to get to. And Asit longer than anyone is like, how do we? Because in Asit, he was in the room with Shalin. He knew him intimately, and so for him, the spark was really from his life, Asith himself was inspired by Shalin as a family member. And Asith is also in the movie. He plays an uncle in the movie,
Mm.
but he was inspired by him, his life, and he wanted to share this message with the world. Right, that's been his goal the entire time, and so he's carried this movie, and we've now gotten to this point where we're about to world premiere and put this out into the world, and I feel very hopeful. I think that what Asita tried to do, and what I wanted to do in terms of like spreading this message and this idea further, I'm very hopeful that that's what's going to happen. And it'll have its own life, but I feel good about like getting it out to people and people responding to it. But we will see.
No, I think it's going to definitely touch people, and I
Yeah.
think it will leave that message, because I think there's films that try and put out messages, but it feels too forced,
Yeah.
right? And then that, like, the film is a bit too saccharine, right?
Yes.
It just
Yes.
doesn't feel real. Right,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel authentic. Everyone is just a saint in the film, right?
Yeah.
And I think an interesting thing with this is, as I said, there's a character at the beginning who I'm a bit like, "Yo, what's wrong with you, man?" Right? But we see that journey,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's like, you know, it's not trying to make this person,
Yeah.
you know, a saint, right?
Yeah.
Like just spitting out all of these profound things. No,
Yeah.
they're doing things that aren't the best, and
Yeah.
even up to a certain point, they're still a bit. And you're just like, now you're still now, like,
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
happening, man?
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think because of that, right? It it just makes it feel realer,
yeah,
right? And so we get these kind of authentic interactions. And so I think that's what separates this from a lot of other things, that, you know what I mean, it just hits differently. So
yeah,
people will keep coming back to it, because it's not just like this important message and this kind of,
yeah,
no, this kind of like view on how we should live our lives and look at the world, right?
yeah.
But it's also doing it in a way where you're not being hammered over the head with it. You're not being, just forced. It's real. It's real life, and you get
Oh,
that.
oh, Kevin, thank you. Like, no, because we worked hard at that, and I think that's so important. We didn't want to make a movie that was didactic. That was sort of just kind of telling you, yeah, like you're saying, we didn't want to hammer home a message. It's not. I don't want to say this is a message movie. It is a
Mm,
journey and not just Sean. And your point too, it's like it is an ensemble too. It's the family. And as you're speaking to, it's like that. I think all of us, we are shades of gray in so many ways. The good, the bad, all of it. And
yeah,
I do hope, that the movie shed some light on that, in the sense that we're all complex and complicated, and how we deal with complex situations is different for everybody. And I hope that makes it relatable, even if you haven't gone through this experience, and a lot of people have. But if you haven't, that it is, you can relate in some way, that does feel real, it does feel grounded in something, that we're not perfect, that we do have compassion and the ability to change and all those kinds of things. And I do think, and that was our big thing, when I was talking to Faran at the Faran Tahir, who plays the father in the film. A big thing that I was talking to him about, and what I love about him, is that he does bring this sort of energy to a role, but he has so much compassion and empathy, and we always just talked about that everything that he does, even if it feels like it's you know if it's hurting someone, getting in the way of someone's what they really want to do, or love, all those kind of things, his motivations still come from a place of love. They come from a place of care. And I thought of that as a father. I see now as a father, I understand that, like, oh, there are things that I care about my kids so much, and I might do things that I think is best for them, even though that might not be the right thing. All those kinds of things happen, but you realize that, yeah, it's all coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place and
Yes.
I think if every character does that, then and it's rooted in that, then they stop being just arch villains. They
Mm,
become
mm.
real. They become people.
Yeah, you can see the nuance in it,
Yeah,
right? Because
good.
then
Yeah.
there's all these other interactions. So you'll be
Hmm.
like, all right, well, you know what I mean? I see
Yeah,
that they have this love, right? I see
yeah,
how they're interacting, but it's this one thing that then they can't
yeah,
get past.
yeah.
And it's just like,
That's so great.
yeah, no, yeah, it's just super, super interesting. Like, oh, one thing that I was, it was just when I was reviewing it that I noticed, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, and is Olivia like
Mhm.
West's actual daughter?
No, they share the same last name. I know that's so crazy. Yeah, yeah, they share the same last name, Liang, but they are not related at all, which is fun. But it was it's interesting. You know, Frances, that's the real person's name, Frances. She's Taiwanese American, and one of my closest friends, collaborators, the editor Carrie Lin, he's also Taiwanese American. So it was partly, we were looking for Taiwanese American actors,
Mm.
and we were looking for people who, and Olivia, she was just amazing from the beginning when we saw her. But yeah, West and Olivia, they're not related, but they share the same last name, and it was fun to see them together and bring them together.
Right, because there's a great chemistry. So I was just like,
Yeah,
"Oh, that's
yeah,
why." Right,
yeah,
because yeah, that's why the chemistry is so
yeah,
good there. But no, okay, it's literally they're
yeah.
just great actors, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and the truth is, West, yeah, he's not that much. He's actually wouldn't really be her father, so we had to age him up a bit. So he was, but they were great. Great to work with. West is another amazing actor. I mean, again, just this ensemble, I was just blown away by it, and not even just like our main cast, who are incredible, right? From Kapil, Olivia, Karan Soni, uh, Faran, Meera, West, Tom Everett Scott, amazing cast. But then it's
Mm.
also I felt, and I'm curious how you think, Kevin, but like the surrounding family. Some people don't
Oh,
even have, lines, but like just felt very lived in to me, and that was really important. And I was so grateful and thankful to the actors who came in because they were awesome, and they really gave a lot and made it feel like a real family dynamic, which is great.
no, definitely. Like there's that bit at the towards the end, right? When yeah, like Fiona runs into the hospital and she's just like, I'm
Yeah,
gonna see him regardless. I don't care.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you have oh gosh. He says try to remember everything.
That's too hard.
Uh,
You're
yeah,
talking
it's
about Karin?
yes, he's cat yeah, we
Yeah,
have Milan
yeah,
and
yeah.
the girl.
Ami, who's played by Anita
Yes.
Kalatara,
Yes.
who's also
Yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
she's like, "No, we've
yeah,
gotta support her," and
yeah,
it's just like those little things,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's just like those little interactions and
yeah,
moments really, you know what I mean? As you said, make it feel like this
yeah,
extended family and, people supporting, like, other
yeah,
people and doing their little thing at that moment in
yeah,
time. So,
yeah.
yeah, all of
Oh,
that
yeah,
stuff
that's great.
works really well.
That's great. That's great to hear. Yeah, this is more me just getting a response from you. You're the first one. Now I'm like, okay, tell me. But it's great. But I'm glad you felt that, yeah, because I love this cast. I love all of them, and it's also just like I was thinking about it because there's been a bit of a movement in the U.S. in terms of making films with more diversity in terms of cast.
Mm.
Those kind of things. It's happening, But I find like what I love about this movie is that, and I hope when people see it, it's like we have a wealth of talented actors and also people behind the camera. I mean, like you said, I mean, I've
Mm.
been around for a while. There are a lot of people who've done a lot of great work in this movie, and I'm so happy that this is a nice showcase for them too. That we get to see them all together and play these roles, because you don't always get these kinds of roles. You know, South Asians. It's like these are hopefully three-dimensional and characters and things to play with that aren't always there. You know, for them.
Well, yeah, because I think a lot of times, right, when you get a cast like this, it might be on something like Shogun, or you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like you know what I mean, like
yeah,
a,
yeah,
a historical thing along that line, like you
yeah,
know, was it
yeah.
Pink Picotu on Apple? I no, I'm butchering that
Yeah,
name.
yeah, yeah. Pachinko. Yes.
Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
thank
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
yeah, it's those sort of things where you get
Hmm.
this kind of cast, right?
Yeah.
And you you know, I find it can be frustrating because a lot of times when there is maybe an interracial couple, one of the couple's white, right? It's
Like,
a black
yes.
person with a
Yeah.
white person, or an
Yeah.
Indian person,
Yeah.
a Chinese person, or Asian person
Yeah.
with a white person. And that's
Yeah.
like it just seems that when people say interracial,
Yeah.
it it's this like
Yeah.
dynamic, right? But
Yeah.
white has to be there. And it's just like, look, there's all you love is this funny thing, right? It's not just on right, one person has to be this or that. It's just like we fall in love with so many different people, and there's so many different
Yes.
people in the world. So why can't we just have these different looks, right? These different stories. And so at the beginning, when I didn't even know this was based on a real story,
Mm.
one of the things was I was just like, this is so nice just seeing a story with a
Yeah.
different cast,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
That's what
Yeah.
I was thinking. And then at the end, you see it's based on a true story, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh damn. But even that, right? Because
Yeah.
there's so many true things that only recently we're seeing, right? When you think of hidden colors and like all of these
Yes.
different stories that no one knows about, right? No
Yeah.
one knows about, and then suddenly it's just like, oh, here's a story, and you're like, wait, what? Huh? You know what I mean? So it's always just this. It's so I don't even know how to like bring it to words, man. It's like this
Yeah.
validation that like these stories can finally find a place,
Yeah.
right? And we can see more different reflections of this world on our screens. And there's just something so nice about it, because I don't know what it was like for you growing up, but you know what I mean? Like you never saw this stuff, right? You
No,
just
never.
never
I
saw
mean,
it.
no, it was always, yeah, for me. And I grew up. I grew up in a tiny town in Maine, which is northeast in the U.S., which is not the most diverse state in the country. And so, yeah. And when I was growing up, there was nothing to model after. In terms of
Mm,
definitely as a filmmaker, but movies they were so far and few between. So even in my own work, whether it's this movie, my first film, Brahmin Bulls, or even short films that I've made along the way, um, I've always tried to express this sort of reflection that I see from me, which is,
yeah.
because I do also think, like in this movie, it's not specifically necessarily a South Asian story or an Asian story. It is. It could happen to anyone. The fact that
Mm,
they're South Asian, the fact that they're Asian, is a part of the story, but it's not the story.
no.
And I think that's sort of the thing that I've always tried to kind of want to lean into in the kinds of projects I make. And so yeah, and I think it's now only now recently, like the last like whatever 5 years, where you start to see the possibility of that happening out in the world in different projects and the acceptance of it, and it's refreshing, it's inspiring, and it's nice because yeah, it is like it feels like the real world that I'm surrounded by when I look around. And everyone has different realities, and that's all great too. So it's just that now we have space for all of it. It's
Mm,
not just one; it
yeah,
can be others too, which is nice.
yeah.
You know?
And I think that's the thing. Like, you don't have to be like Asian to
Yeah,
watch the film and appreciate the
yeah,
film,
yes,
right?
yeah.
I was speaking to Princeton James the
Okay,
other day about his new film, Queen Rising. And, you know, a thing about the film is, you know, it's got this incredibly talented black cast, but it's not a black film,
yeah, yeah,
right? And
yep,
I think that's the thing. It's like we can have these
yeah,
stories and we can have these diverse casts, but it's not hindering. It's not like making it smaller. No, but
yeah,
it's just this story with this different perspective, with this different look. But anyone can look at this story and go, I get it. I emphasize with it. I can, you know,
yeah,
see what they're saying. Right. And I think it's been this crazy disservice to be like, oh, no one would emphasize with something or understand something if it's not
totally,
got people that look like them in it, right?
absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and I was so happy. I'm curious about this other movie that you're talking about too, because and you see it happening now, which is nice, and I think that that's important. And I don't mean that important for importance sake. Just like you said, it's like we can empathize with anybody going through different experiences, and that's the joy of
Mm,
stories because you fall into also just you fall into people's lives that aren't you,
yeah.
and it's nice to see that perspective in the world. So that's yeah, I love that, and I think it's happening, which is nice
Mm.
for me. Yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, after making this, right?
yeah,
What like goes through your mind about the next project, right? Because
yeah,
this is such a like incredible story. So
yep,
it's just like, and such an important, like, and poignant story. So you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, what then goes through your mind about, okay, what do I do next? Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's such a great question. I mean, and it's always like because you're constantly working on something, or at least I do. I'm always buried in something, so it's hard to like pick your head up. And I'm for the first time in a while feeling like I can do that. Um, and there's another story that I had been working on, and I'm hoping to do. It's also based on another true story, um, also about a South Asian story. It's kind of an immigrant love story that has a bit of a tragic, but then again a hopeful end. There's a hate crime that happened in the U.S. Back in 2017, and so
Right.
it deals with that. So there's some heavy subject matter, but it's a story about hope and resilience, and so I'm hoping to get that off the ground next. But I hope it's not a big 12-year lag in between. I'm hoping that it happens much sooner. But yeah, it's hard to like you know jump on it, but I think you learn so much each project. And again, like whether it was the TV experience to this indie film, I definitely feel like getting into my next movie, there's so much I can take from this one, whether it's balancing tone or any of those kinds of things that I think are going to be very beneficial for the next one. So I'm hopeful to get the next one going sooner than
Mm.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that would be great because, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Just seeing what you did with this,
yeah.
it's, yeah, it's unacceptable. If we have to wait another, you know what I mean, 11 or so years, man, it'd be like, what is he doing? No. Oh man. Like, do you have a distribution set up yet or more festivals that you'll be going to after
Yeah,
Dancing with Films?
yeah. This is just this is sort of the beginning of our journey. We don't have distribution yet. We are sort of we're on our sort of festival run, starting with Dance with Films, and we're actually going to be coming to London on the 26th. We're opening the London Indian Film Festival, and then we're playing in Birmingham on the 27th. So those are the first kind of things we're getting it out, and I'm very curious what a UK audience is going to take. from this movie. Um, and then yeah, then we're going to be playing in festivals through 2024, and then looking for a release sometime in 2025, and a broader release. So yeah, if people are interested, this just keep tabs on us through Instagram and Facebook, and we'll definitely be posting about where we are and when
Oh,
the
sorry.
movie's getting out and how.
Okay. So yeah, how can they find you on Instagram?
Yeah, we're at Paper Flowers Movie, and we're paperflowersmovie.com. Those are our handles and website. So you can find us there. And yeah, and you can find me at Mahesh Pailoor. That's just my full name. You can find me across everything.
Awesome. Yeah, man. People, the links will be on the website, so make sure
Great.
you do it. Oh, my UK peoples, right? The 26th of June,
Yeah, it's
mark it
26.
down,
I'm
right?
very excited
So,
about that.
yeah,
And I'll
that will
be there
be
for that too. Yeah.
outstanding,
Yeah.
outstanding. You know what I mean? Definitely hit me up when you touch down in London, man.
Yeah. Would love that. Yeah, it's great. I'm excited to be in London.
Yeah, no, that will be yeah, that'll be good. That'll be good, man. I think yeah, it'd be nice to yeah, I think because I think that festival's in its 15th year.
Yeah.
15th year.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
man, all right. Well, it looks like you've got a good slate of things, right? To build that
Yeah.
momentum to
I think so.
you know what I mean? Just whatever kind of release Paper Flowers will get next year.
Yeah. Yeah, we're excited. And I'm very hopeful about it. So, you know.
Oh, tremendous, man. Well, look, I really appreciate, yeah, I mean, your time right now. I've enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed the film. It was just, oh man, yeah, it was that emotional ride, but it was just so interesting being introduced to this story that I just was not aware of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and I think there's that message in this film. You know what I mean? Just be in the moment, appreciate what's
Yes.
around you. I think
Yeah.
you can get so busy, right? So drawn into so many different things that you can forget that. So it's always just nice to see something like this that just reminds you,
Yeah.
remind you of those things. And I think it's like also it's just like when like going through some heavy stuff in life and you see that I you know what I mean, that doesn't have to define those moments, right? You
Yeah.
like find those people around you and enjoy that time, right? And I think it's just having that reminder is just really important. So yeah, this film, man, it was great. It was great. So
Kevin,
thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you, man. This was really lovely talking to you. I mean, I really, really appreciate you taking the time having me on, but also taking the time to watch the movie and to give me and share your feedback. And it's just, hey, it's been a great conversation. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, no, man. I really appreciate you. I appreciate because yeah, I was having problems with the screener, and as it like sent me over a new one, and
Yeah,
yeah, so I really appreciate that, and especially then after you know what I mean, reading his statement and
yeah,
realizing his connection to it,
yeah,
right? It was
yeah.
just like, yo. So yeah, man, I appreciate
It's
him. I
very powerful.
appreciate you, and yeah. I really hope that you know Dancing with Films, man, this opening night, right?
Yeah,
Opening night, which is huge. Man, I
yeah. It's
hope
very
this is
exciting.
such an incredible experience for you. So, man, just soak it in, enjoy it. You deserve it. And yeah, enjoy London too, man.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
No worries, man. Enjoy the rest of your day, yeah?
Okay, you
All
too.
right,
All right,
bye.
bye.